Hi, my name is Barb Tennant, and I live in Syracuse, New York. And I have been married for 57 years to my high school sweetheart, and we have 4 children. Randy Jr., who is 56, Derrick, who is 54, and Christina, who is 53, and Julie, who is 50 years old. And she is our daughter with Down syndrome. I have had a history of 50 years of many things that have happened in different emotions, but I guess for now I wanted to start at the beginning. When I was pregnant for Julie, I kept having this feeling that God was saying, get ready. Get ready for what? I didn't know, but it was just very strong. And I told my husband and our pastor, and they said, well, you're pregnant and women have all these emotions. And I said, that's not it. I said, I'm not afraid. I just feel he's telling me to get ready. And at the time, I was in a Bible study, and it was on Psalm 23. And it was at the end of August. I was 9 months pregnant. I was due the next week, and it was 90 degrees, which is hot for New York. And the Bible study was just down the street from me, but the girl didn't have any air conditioning. And I wasn't sure if I really wanted to go being so very pregnant and having it be so hot, but I knew that I should. And so I went. And it was very interesting because that week it was given the characteristics of sheep. And I'm going to read you some of them because it was very significant. First of all, a sheep has no sense of direction. A sheep is defenseless. It doesn't have claws or teeth or any way to defend itself. It's helpless when it's injured. Most animals could lick their wounds or roll in the grass. But a sheep, when it hurts and is injured, has to depend upon a shepherd to care for him. A sheep will instinctively trust his shepherd to provide for tomorrow. You don't see sheep going around being worried because they just trust, and they're completely dependent upon their shepherd. A sheep doesn't have to be marked or branded because it won't follow another shepherd's voice. He knows his own shepherd and will follow only him. It was also brought to my attention how sheep will not drink from swift running water because they're clumsy, and they would have a tendency to fall in, and then all the water would go into their wool and they would drown. So a loving shepherd would lead his sheep beside still waters. So less than a week after that, on September 3rd, 1975, our fourth child was born, another little girl. Perfect, right? 2 girls and 2 boys. But the silence in the delivery room was deafening. And I kept saying, what is the matter? And I asked my doctor, is there something wrong with the baby? And he was just quiet. And I got really scared because they wouldn't say anything. And my mind triggered back to that Bible study. The doctor came in and took my husband aside, and he said, Mr. Tennant, there's a very strong chance that your baby is going to be retarded, a word they used then. And he showed him the line in her hands and the bridge of the nose and said that what we call this is mongoloid, which is the term they used back then, which is unfortunate for the Mongolian people, but this was 50 years ago. And he said, I don't think you should tell Barb about it because she has 3 little ones at home, and I don't think she's strong enough. But Randy came right in to the delivery room, the recovery room, and he told me because we never kept things from each other. And I kept hearing the echoes of that Bible study that I had just gone to, that I almost didn't. But I knew that the Lord had to be my shepherd, and I had no sense of direction. My shepherd had to lead me. I was defenseless. I couldn't hide it. I couldn't fight it. I prayed for a clean heart of acceptance without bitterness And I knew that my shepherd would have to take the wound that cut so deep, and he would have to care for it. I had to be completely dependent upon my shepherd and trust him for the future. And I knew that I had to be still and listen for his voice, and he would lead me beside still waters. It was such a comfort to know that my shepherd was there and he knew everything that was going on. We saw our baby for the first time that night together, and the names that we had picked out, because back then you didn't know if it was a boy or a girl until the baby was born. But it was going to be Colleen for a girl and Matthew for a boy. But as we looked at her, they didn't fit. And that just wasn't right. And so I was looking through the scriptures, and I found a verse in Malachi 3:17, that says, "They will be mine, says the Lord of hosts, in the day when I make up my jewels." And I thought, Julie, let's call her Julie. She is something special that God had given to us. And so that's where her name came from. And in the next couple of days, Randy has two older aunts that never had any children, and they went to this very expensive department store, and they were going to get her a dress, but they kept going back to this pink and white blanket. And so that's what they decided to get, and they had it wrapped and sent it to my room, because back then when he had a baby, he had to be in the hospital for a couple of days. And so I opened it up, and it was this beautiful pink and white blanket with lace around the edge. So having 3 toddlers at home, I immediately went to the washing instructions for this beautiful blanket. And I looked at the tag, and I just started to cry. And my doctor, who was Jewish, came in and he said, "Oh, Barb, I see they told you about the baby." And I said, "No, it was okay when Randy told me about the baby. And I know that you don't believe in Jesus, but I want you to look at this tag and tell me that he did not style her." And the tag, I saved it. It says "Styled by the Shepherd." And it was a blanket company out in Utah. And I wrote them a letter and told them my whole experience and my testimony, and it was wonderful. And the next night when Randy came in, they had a thing where when visiting hours were over with, you could have the dad stay, and they would bring him a sandwich, and he could feed the baby, and you could spend some time together. And so the nurse came in and handed Randy the baby, and he looked at her and he said, "Honey, look, it's a miracle. She doesn't have the line. The bridge on her nose is back." And the nurse came in and she said, "Mr. Tennant, can give me that baby back? I'm sorry, but I brought you the wrong baby." And we could have gotten the hospital in a lot of trouble then. But when they finally brought Julie in, Randy was in a rocking chair. I can see it as clear as anything. And he held her and he said, "Nobody will ever take you away from me again." And so he had an immediate bond with her. So that's the beginning of the journey. There are many things that have happened, obviously, in 50 years, but God has always been faithful. He has always been our shepherd. Anytime that we asked for wisdom, and there were a lot of times because we had no resources and we had to ask him for help, he was always there. So I hope this encourages you, and I hope to get to meet some of you someday. Bye.